So I know it's late, and it's been a long time you all have been waiting for me to finish Denim and Diamonds, and that's what I'm going to do for you right now. Page 153, and yes, I don't have my readers on, so bear with me. She loosened his grip enough to raise her head. "Is anything wrong with Cricket?" she asked urgently. He frowned. "No," he said before he kissed her with a thoroughness that left her weak and clinging. "Then what are you doing here?" Chase closed his eyes briefly. "That's a long story, Letty. We've got to talk." She broke free from his embrace. "I don't think we can anymore. Every time we get close to each other, we end up arguing. I know I hurt you, Chase, but I don't know how much longer I can stand being hurt back. After last night, I decided it was best if we didn't see each other again. You make us sound as bad as Lonnie and Joy. Worse. It doesn't have to be that way," as she says as she looks around for her readers. Well, we're just going to have to forego it. So if you see me holding the book really close, it's because I can't hardly see. I probably should stop, but I want to get this done. No, I don't think we're capable of anything else," she whispered. "Not anymore." His eyes blazed into hers. "Letty, I know." Chase wasn't making any sense. If he knew they were incapable of sustaining a relationship, then why had he, this is 153 going to 154, been driving like a madman to catch her? Frankly, she wasn't in the mood for this. All she wanted to do was get Cricket and go home. Chase dropped his arms and paced in front of her. "The day you fainted in the garden, I should have figured it out. For weeks before, Lonnie had been telling me how tired you were all the time, how fragile you'd become." He shook his head. "I thought it was because you were depressed and California had spoiled you." "It did. I'm a soft person, unaccustomed to anything resembling hard work." Chase ignored her sarcasm. "Then that day in the cemetery, you tried to tell me, didn't you?" But he didn't allow her to answer his question. "You started talking about life and death, and all I could do was get angry with you because I thought you lied. I wasn't even listening. If I had been, I would have heard what you were trying to tell me." Tears blurred her vision as soon as she stood silent and unmoving before him. "It's the reason you dragged Mary Brandon over to the house for dinner that night, isn't it?" Again he didn't wait for her response. "You figured that if Lonnie was married and anything happened to you, Cricket would have a secure home." "Not exactly." She managed. In the beginning her thoughts had leaned in that direction, but she wasn't the manipulative type, and it had soon become obvious that Lonnie wanted nothing to do with her schemes. Chase placed his hands on her shoulders. "Letty, I saw Dr. Faraday." A hint of a smile brushed the corners of his mouth. "I wanted to go over and hug that man." Page 155. "Chase, you're not making any sense. Cricket told me that when you came back to Rock Springs, you visited a man with a mustache. A man who looked like someone on TV. When did she tell you that?" "Weeks ago, but more damning was that she claimed that you went into a room together, and she had to stay out and wait for you. Oh, dear. You can imagine what Lonnie and I thought." "And you believed it?" It seemed that neither Chase nor her brother knew her. Both seemed willing to condemn her on the flimsiest evidence. If she were meeting a man, the last person she'd take with her was Cricket, but apparently that thought hadn't so much entered their minds. "We didn't know what to believe," Chase answered. "But you automatically assumed the worst." Chase looked properly chagrined. "I know it sounds bad, but there'd been another man in your life before, and how was I to know the same thing wasn't happening again?" "How were you to know?" Letty echoed, slumping against the side of the truck. "How were you to know?" She repeated in a hurt whisper. "What kind of person do you think I am?" "Letty, I'm sorry." She covered her eyes and shook her head. "From the moment you returned, everything's felt wrong. For a while I thought my whole world had been knocked off its axis. Nothing I did seemed to balance it. Today I realized it wasn't my world that was off kilter, but yours. and I couldn't help feeling the effects. Page 156. You're talking in riddles, she said. Once more he started pacing, running his fingers through his hair. Tell me what's wrong. Please, I want to know. I need to know. It's my heart, she whispered. He nodded slowly. I figured that's what it had to be. Dr. Faraday's specialty was the first thing I noticed when you walked into his office. You saw me walk into his office? His gaze skirted away from her. I followed you to Rock Springs, he continued before she could react. I'm not proud of that, Letty. Lonnie convinced me that you and I needed to talk. After last night, we were both hurting so badly. And I guess I wasn't the best company this morning. Lonnie and I went back to the ranch and found your note. From there, we went to Joy's place and she just said you left and you were heading into town. I drove there and I couldn't find you anywhere. That was when I realized you'd probably driven to Rock Springs. If you were meeting a man, I wanted to find out who it was, but I had no idea what I'd do. Probably nothing, but I had to know. So you followed me. He nodded, and after you walked back to the truck, I went to the office and where I caught sight of good old Doctor and his mustache. She sighed, shaking her head. Letty, you have every reason in the world to be angry. All I can do is apologize. No. She met his eyes. I wanted to tell you I've kept this secret for so long, and there was no one that I could tell, and I needed. Letty, please tell me what's wrong with your heart. Page 157. The doctors discovered a small hole when I was pregnant with Cricket. What are they going to do? Surgery. His face tightened. When? Dr. Faraday's already scheduled it. I couldn't afford it. When you first saw my welfare check, I wanted to die. I knew what you thought. There wasn't any way to tell you how much I hate being a recipient of charity. Chase shut his eyes. Letty, I failed you. You needed me and I failed you. Chase, I'm not going to blame you for that. I failed you too. I've been so blind, so stupid. I've suffered my share of the same affliction, she said wryly. This time I can change this, he said, taking her by the shoulders. How? Letty, his fingers were gentle and his eyes were tender. We're getting married. Yeah, 'cause that always solves everything. Oh, page 161. We're getting married, Chase announced without preamble. He looked challenging Letty to defy him. Lonnie's head shot up. What? Letty and I were getting married, Chase repeated, and the sooner the better. Lonnie's eyes grew suspicious, and when he spoke, his voice was almost a whisper. You're pregnant again, aren't you? Letty burst out laughing. I wish it was that simple. She's got a defective heart, Chase said, omitting the details and not giving Letty the opportunity to explain fully. She has to have an operation, major surgery from the sound of it. Page 162. Your heart? Lonnie was shocked and stared at her. Is that why you fainted that day? Partially. Why didn't you tell me? I couldn't, not until I had everything sorted out with the government and the surgery was scheduled. You would have worried yourself into a tizzy, and I didn't want to dump my problems on you of all of your other responsibilities. But he frowned, apparently displeased with her response. I could have helped, or at least been more sympathetic. When I think of the way you've cleaned up around here, you had no business working so hard, planting a garden and doing everything else you have. I wish you would have said, Letty. I feel like a jerk. I didn't tell anyone, Lonnie. Please understand. He wiped back the hand of his mouth. I hope you never keep anything else like this from me again. Believe me, if there wasn't 1,000 times I wanted to tell you and couldn't. I'm going to arrange for the wedding as soon as possible, Chase cut in. And you don't have any objections, do you, Lonnie? His voice demanding and inflexible. Objections? Me? No, not in the least. Honest, Chase, Letty said, patting her brother's shoulder. This whole conversation is becoming monotonous, don't you think? I haven't even agreed to this yet. Call Joy and find out where Cricket is, he told her. Letty moved to the phone and quickly dialed Joy's number. Her friend answered the second ring. Joy, it's Letty. Is Cricket with you, right? Yes, of course. I wouldn't let that brother of yours take her, and frankly she wouldn't have gone with him anyway. I'm sorry, Letty. I really am. You're my friend, and I adore Cricket, but your brother is one of the most... She stopped abruptly. I don't think it's necessary to say anything else, Lonnie. Your brother... You know him better than anyone. Page 163. In some ways, Letty felt she didn't know Lonnie at all. Joy, whatever happened, I'm sorry. It's not your fault. By the way, did Chase ever catch up with you? I didn't think to mention that after he's gone that you said something about a doctor's appointment. Yes, he found me. That's the reason it's taken me so long to get back to you. I'm home now, but Chase and I have been talking for the past hour or so. I didn't mean to leave Cricket with you all this time. Cricket's been great, so don't worry about that. We had a great time. At least we did until your brother decided to visit. She paused, and Letty heard the regret in her voice and spoke again. I don't know what is with the two of you. I seem to bring the worst out in Lonnie. I know he does me. Letty wished she knew what it was, too. Discussing the situation over the phone made her a little uncomfortable. She needed to see Joy, read her expression, her body language. I'll leave you now to pick up Cricket. Don't bother, Joy said. I'm going out of an errand, and I'll be happy to drop her off. You're sure that's not a problem? Positive. Joy hesitated again. Lonnie got home all right, didn't he? I mean, it is a long walk. When I told him to leave, I didn't mean for him to hike the whole way back. I forgot he didn't have the truck. By the time I realized it, he had already started down the sidewalk, and he ignored me when I called him. Yes, he's home, no worse for wear. I'll see you in a little while then, Joy murmured. She sounded guiltily, and Letty suspected that she was bringing Cricket home hoping she'd get a chance to apologize. Unfortunately, in Lonnie's mood, that would be nearly impossible. And in case I didn't say it before, this is page 164. Letty replaced the phone, and not before Lonnie shouted from the kitchen, What do you mean, no worse for wear? I've got blisters that would have brought a lesser man to his knees. What do you want me to tell her, that you would have dragged yourself in here barely able to move? Letty, I don't think you should raise your voice. It can't be any good for your heart. Chase draped his arm around Letty's shoulder, led her back to the table, and eased her into a chair. I am not an invalid, she shouted immediately. Sorry for the outburst. Chase flinched as if she attacked him. And in a way, she had. Please, Letty, we have a lot to discuss. I want to have the details for this wedding ironed out before I leave. He knelt in front of her again, and she wondered if he expected her to kneel over at any moment. She sighed. Nothing she said seemed to have reached Chase. I'm taking a bath, Lonnie announced. He stuffed his socks and boots and picked them up as he limped out into the kitchen. Chase, listen to me, Letty pleaded, her hands framing his worried face. There's no reason to marry me now. Page 165. Once the surgery's over, I'm back on my feet. We'll discuss it if you're still feeling the same. Are you turning me down for a second time, Letty? Oh, Chase, you know that isn't it. I told you the other night how much I love you. If my feelings for you didn't change in all these years where we were apart, they don't change in the next few months. Letty, you're not thinking clearly. It's my defective heart, not my brain. I'll arrange for the license right away, he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. If you want a church wedding with all the trimmings, we'll arrange that for later. Why not bring Pastor Downey to the hospital, and he can administer last rites while he's there, she said flippantly. Don't say that. If I agree to this, I'll be married in a church the first time. You're not thinking. Chase, you're not the one driving into deep end here. You're the one who's diving into the deep end here, not me. Give me one solid reason why we should get married now. Concern for Cricket ought to be enough. What's what my daughter got to do with this? She loves me and I love her. His mouth turned up in a smile. I never guessed I could love her as much as I do. In the beginning, every time I saw her, it was like someone stuck a knife in my heart. One day, he lowered his gaze to the floor. I realized that nothing I did was going to keep me from loving that little girl. She's so much a part of you, and I couldn't care about you the way I do and not love her. Isn't that the best thing you ever heard? It's like, how, romantic. Anyway, hearing him talk about his feelings for Cricket lifted Letty's sagging spirits and the closest he'd come to admitting that he loved her. More than that, Letty, if something did happen to you, I'd be a better parent than Lonnie. Don't you agree? Chase abruptly, arguably was more of a natural, and he had greater patience to the extent she did agree. But she began, I don't. I know, he said, raising his hand. You're thinking that you don't have to marry me to make Cricket's legal guardian, and you're right. But I want you to consider Lonnie's pride in all this. If you give me responsibility for Cricket, what's going to say, your brother's going to say? He's her only living relative, and if he he'd be hurt if he felt you didn't trust him properly to raise your child. But nothing is going to happen, Letty blurted out, knowing she couldn't completely be sure of that. But what if the worst does happen? If you leave things as they are now, Lonnie might have to deal with a grief-stricken 5-year-old child. He'd never be able to cope, Letty. She knew he was right. Lonnie would be overwhelmed. The situation is too important to leave everything to fate, he said. Closing argument, you've got Cricket's future to consider. The surgery is fairly standard procedure. The doctor had told her so himself. Complicated, yes, but not uncommon. Yes, but before you said things could always go wrong, no matter how slight that chance is. We need to be prepared, Chase murmured. Letty didn't know what to think. She'd asked Chase to come up with one good argument, but he outdone himself. In fact, his preoccupation with morbid possibilities struck her as much as considering that it wouldn't let her make even a slight joke about it. However, she understood what he was doing and why. There were other areas Chase stopped to consider, though. If they were to be married, he'd be liable for the cost of her medical care. This is page 167. Chase, this surgery isn't cheap. Dr. Faraday said I could be in the hospital as long as 2 weeks. The hospital alone will run into 5 figures, and that doesn't include the doctor's fee, convalescent care, and the pharmaceutical bills, which will add up to much more. As my wife, you'll be covered by the health insurance policy, he said with such confidence that Letty almost believed him. She desperately wanted to, but she was pretty sure that wouldn't be the case. In all likelihood, your insurance company would deny the claim since my condition is pre-existing. I can find that out easily enough. I'll phone my broker and have him check out the policy right now. He left and returned 5 minutes later. Just as I thought. As my wife, you'd automatically be included for all benefits, no matter when we found out about your heart condition. It sounded too good to be true. Chase, I don't know. I'm through with listening to all the reasons we can't get married. The fact you've rejected one proposal from me, and we both suffered because of it, I won't let you do that to me a second time. Now will you, or won't you marry me? You're sure about the insurance? Page 168. Positive. He crouched in front of her and took both of his hands in his. You're going to marry me, Letty. No more arguments, no more ifs, ands, or buts. He grinned. So we're getting married. Chase made the question more of a statement. Yes, she murmured, loving him so much. But you're taking such a risk. His eyes narrowed. Why? Well, because she stopped when Cricket came running through the door and held out her arms to her daughter, who flew into them. I'm home, Cricket hugged Letty, when rushed over to Chase and threw her arms around his neck with such enthusiasm it knocked him to the floor. Letty watched them and realized above anything else how Chase was to be concerned about Cricket's welfare in the unlikely event that something went wrong. She drew in a shaky breath and held it until her lungs ached. She loved Chase, and although he hadn't spelled out his feelings for her, she knew that he cared deeply for her and for Cricket. That was 168. Okay. Page 200. Letty nodded. The blending of colors, the design, it all spells out how much love and skill Mom put into it. When I decided to leave Red Springs after high school, I went because I didn't want to end up like Mom, and now I realize I couldn't strive toward a finer goal. Lonnie frowned again. I don't understand. You left for California because you didn't want to be a rancher's wife, and yet you married Chase. I know, but I love Chase. I always have. It wasn't being a rancher's wife that I objected to so much. Yes, the life is hard, but the rewards are plentiful. I knew that 9 years ago, and I know it more profoundly now. My biggest fear was that I'd end up dedicating to my life like ranching, like Mom did, and never achieve my own dreams. Page 201. But Mom was happy, and I never once heard her complain. I guess that's why I took such offense when you made it sound as if she wasted her life. Nothing could be farther from the truth. I know that now, Letty murmured, but I didn't understand it for a long time. What upset me most was that I felt like I could never paint the way she wanted to. There was always something else that needed her attention, some other project that demanded her time. It wasn't until I saw the quilt that I understood. She etched for her own enjoyment, but the other things she made were for people she loved. The quilt she was working on when she died for me, and it's taught me perhaps the most valuable lesson of my life. Lonnie's face relaxed into a smile. I'm glad, Letty. In the back of my mind, I had a feeling that once you recuperated from surgery, you'd get restless. But you won't, will you? You've got to be kidding, she said with a laugh. I'm a married woman now, you know. She twisted the diamond wedding band on her finger. My place is here with Chase, and I plan to spend the rest of my life with him. I'm glad to hear that, he said, his relief evident. We got off the subject, didn't we? She said apologetically. Page 202. You wanted to talk to me. He hadn't told her why, but she could guess. Yes, well, it has to do with... He hesitated as if Joyce Fuller's name was going to somehow conjure up. Joy, Letty asked. Lonnie nodded. What about her? In response, Lonnie jerked his fingers through his hair and glared at the ceiling. I'm telling you, Letty, there's no one more shocked by me. I've discovered that I like her. I really like her. The fact is, I can't stop thinking about Joy, but every time I try to talk to her, I say something stupid, and before I know it, we're arguing. Letty bent her head to show that she understood. She witnessed more than one of her brother's clashes with Joy. We don't just argue like normal civilized people, Lonnie continued. She makes me so angry I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Letty lowered her eyes, afraid to smile that would annoy her brother, especially since he'd come for her help, except that at that moment she didn't want to feel qualified to offer him advice. The worst part is, he went on, I was in town with this Glenn Brewster. The worst part is, he went on, I was in town this morning and I heard that Joy agreed to go on a date with Glenn Brewster. The thought of her dating another man has me all twisted up inside. Glenn Brewster? That surprised Letty. Isn't he the guy who manages the grocery store? One and the same, Lonnie confirmed, scowling. Can you imagine her and going out with someone like Glenn? He's just all wrong for her. That was page 202. 203. Have you asked out Joy yourself? The way the color streaked his face told Letty what she needed to know. I don't think I should answer that. He lifted his eyes pitilessly. I want to take her out, but everyone's working against me. Everyone? He cleared his throat. No, not everyone. I guess I'm my own worst enemy. I know that sounds crazy. I mean, it's not like I haven't had girlfriends before, but she's different from the other girls I met on the rodeo circuit. He stared down at the newly waxed kitchen floor. All I want to do is tell me what a woman wants to hear from a man. A woman like Joy. If I only knew that, then maybe I could do something right for once. The door slammed in the distance. Lonnie's gaze flew up to meet Letty's. Joy? Probably. Oh, great, he groaned. Don't panic. Me? He asked with a short, sarcastic laugh. Why should I do that? The woman's told me in no uncertain terms that she never wants to see me again. Her last words to me were, and I quote, take a flying leap into the nearest cow pile. What did you say to her, for heaven's sakes? He shrugged and looking uncomfortable. I better not repeat it. Oh, Lonnie, don't you ever learn? She's not one of your buckle bunnies. But you already know that. Maybe if you quit insulting her, you'd be able to have a civil conversation. I decided something, he said, and I don't know or when, but I'm going to marry her. The words had no sooner left his lips than the screen door opened. 204. Cricket came flying into the kitchen, bursting to tell her mother about her adventures with Joy at school. She started speaking so fast the words ran together. I saw my classroom and I got to meet Mrs. Weber, and I sat in a real desk and everything. Joy followed Cricket into the kitchen, but stopped abruptly when she saw Lonnie. The expression on her face suggested that if he said one word, she'd leave. As if taking his cue, Lonnie reached for his hat and stood. I better get back to work. Good talking to you, Letty, he said stiffly. His gaze skipped from his sister to Joy, and he inclined his head politely. Hello, Ms. Fuller. Mr. Ellison. Joy dipped her head too, ever so slightly. They gave each other a wide berth as Lonnie stalked out of the kitchen. Before he opened the screen door, sent a pleading glance to Letty, but she wasn't sure what she was expected to do. Now, I'm going to leave you hanging with some questions to be answered. There's an argument near the end of the book where Chase basically tells Letty, okay, you've recouped, you're better now, so you're probably going to go back to California. So does she go back to California and leave Chase for the diamond? Or does she really realize, like we've said before in the book, that the best diamonds was already where she was at all along? I think I've answered that question for you, but to find out the answer yourself, read Debbie May Comer, Denim and Diamonds. I am working on the second book, which is a military match. I'm almost done with it. But I want to give you a rating for Denim and Diamonds. If you can find this book, buy it. You won't regret it. And I'm giving it a 20 plus. Because everything that glitters is not gold. And sometimes in life, she had to go through so many rough patches. Sometimes she struggled on it on her own. Sometimes I think God led her path back to home. And you know, it's so weird when she had that conversation with her dead parents at the graveyard, and she asked her parents to give her a friend to lean on. And if you think about it, when he thought that she was going to the Rock Falls to go meet a man with a mustache, he was jealous, and he wanted to go see who that man was. Remember, he said he didn't know what he would probably do if he seen her with another man, and then it comes out that the other man was Dr. Faraday, and he steps up and he's like that Brad Paisley song. He didn't have to be the dad that he was. And that gives this book a 20 plus. So check out Denim and Diamonds, okay? Best wishes.